It all began in 1845 when a boy named Thomas Wells ran back to his cabin, pale as a corpse, murmuring through trembling teeth about what he had witnessed. He recounted that while gathering firewood for his mother, he saw a naked woman lurking in the shadows of the forest. But she was not ordinary. Surrounded by wolves, she crouched over the bloody carcass of a goat, tearing into its flesh with sharp teeth, her long nails digging into the animal's entrails. The wolves, in absolute silence, watched as if they revered her. The villagers were terrified by the boy's story. Who was that woman? A witch? A living curse? Determined to put an end to the horror before something worse happened, a group of cowboys organized a hunt. For 3 nights, they rode through the forest, following tracks of paws and human footprints intertwined in the mud. On the 4th day, they found her. The woman was curled up at the base of a dead tree, her wild eyes gleaming in the torchlight. Her tangled hair fell over her thin shoulders, and her dirty body was covered in old scars. As the cowboys approached, she growled like a cornered animal, but despite her fury, she was just a woman, or so they thought. They seized her by force, tying her wrists and ankles with thick leather ropes, and dragged her to an isolated wooden shack, locking her inside. That night, the silence felt heavier than usual. Not even the crickets dared to sing. Then, in the middle of the darkness, a howl broke the air, deeper and more terrifying than any wolf had ever made. The cowboys awoke with a start, grabbing their rifles. When they ran to the shack, what they saw made their blood run cold. The door was wide open, the chains shattered as if something supernatural had torn them apart. Inside, there were only deep claw marks on the walls and the smell of blood and damp earth. Wolf tracks surrounded the structure, but among them, something far worse. Human footprints that, little by little, transformed into paws. The she-wolf vanished that night and was never seen again. But the howls around Lake Espantosa never ceased. To this day, they say that when the mist rises over the waters and the wolves begin to howl, it is because she is still lurking, waiting for those who dare to challenge the forest, and those who get lost there are never seen again. A traveling salesman arrived in a small town late at night, exhausted from the road. He needed a place to stay, so he checked into the first hotel he could find. The receptionist, a quiet woman with tired eyes, handed him the key but hesitated before speaking again. "One thing," she said, "the door at the end of the hallway, the one with no number, please don't try to open it. It's just a storage room, always locked. Guests aren't allowed inside." The man nodded, too tired to care. He took his key and went straight to his room. The hallway was dimly lit, the wallpaper peeling in some spots. There was an old, musty smell in the air, like wood that had been damp for too long. He shrugged it off and settled into his room. The first night passed without trouble. The bed was uncomfortable, the springs creaking beneath his weight, but he was too exhausted to care. But on the second night, something felt different. Lying in bed, he thought he heard something. A soft scratching sound, almost like nails dragging against wood. At first, he assumed it was mice in the walls, but the sound was steady, rhythmic. It seemed to be coming from the end of the hallway, from the door with no number. Curiosity gnawed at him. Why would a hotel forbid guests from entering a simple storage room? He crept down the hallway and tried the knob. Locked. But there was a keyhole. He bent down and peeked inside. The room was dimly lit, almost identical to his own. Against the far wall sat a woman. She was pale, deathly pale, with long dark hair. Her eyes were fixed on the door, as if she knew he was there. Her lips barely moved, but he swore he could hear something, a whisper, too faint to understand. His stomach twisted. He stumbled back and hurried to bed, pulling the covers over himself like a child hiding from a nightmare. The next morning, he convinced himself it was a trick of the light. Maybe the room had a mannequin inside, some forgotten decoration left to collect dust. He nearly managed to push the thought from his mind. But when night fell again, the scratching returned. His heart pounded as he approached the door once more. He bent down and looked through the keyhole. This time, he saw nothing but red, like a deep stain covering the keyhole. Had she blocked it with a cloth? Or worse, was it something else? A chill ran down his spine. He stepped back, almost tripping over his own feet. Unable to sleep, he went downstairs and told the receptionist what he had seen. She turned pale. That room. Years ago, a man killed his wife in there. Since then, guests reported strange noises, whispers, and even seeing someone inside. But the worst part? The woman's ghost is always described the same way, skin white as snow, with blood-red eyes. The salesman felt his breath catch in his throat. His mind raced, replaying what he had seen. The pale woman, the red stain. He didn't stay another night. He packed his bags and left before sunrise, never looking back. But as he drove away from town, his rearview mirror caught something strange. A pale figure standing in the hotel window, watching him leave. My work has taken me to many places, places where people wouldn't go willingly, places I even regret visiting. During one of my long walks, I came across an abandoned house in an area where few people lived. Passing by the surrounding houses, no one had mentioned it, but for some reason, everyone who answered the door kept staring at that house. When asked about it, they would send us away without saying a word. But it was our job to go there. The house, besides being empty, was completely stripped down, just a pile of walls with a roof over it. No windows, no doors, barely any divisions inside. The smell of rotting wood mixed with moisture created a suffocating atmosphere. We entered, my colleagues and I. While they walked around the house towards the backyard, I decided to go through the house, also heading to the back. But I stopped while inside. At first, I just felt it. Something was watching me. My colleagues were shouting for me to join them, but I couldn't hear them. The air inside the house felt so heavy that my steps became slow and sluggish. The more I walked toward the back door, the stronger the feeling of being watched became. The air inside seemed denser, and a chill ran down my spine. I tried to resist looking back, but I couldn't. I turned my back to the door and looked toward what used to be a bedroom. It was the only thing still divided in the house. But, strangely, there was nothing there. Just the same emptiness as the rest of the house. But something felt wrong. A metallic scent invaded my nostrils, and for a moment, I thought I heard a faint whisper. Feeling slightly relieved, I turned back to the back door. That's when I saw her. A little girl, holding a small teddy bear, staring at me. Her gaze carried a weight so heavy, it felt like it could bring down what was left of the house. My mind screamed at me to run, but I was completely paralyzed. She started walking slowly toward me. The closer she got, the harder it became to breathe. Time seemed to slow down. The light coming from the back door vanished, leaving the house in complete darkness. A coldness settled in, and a shiver ran through my skin. As I struggled to think of a way to escape the darkness, a flash of lightning-like light illuminated the house again. Along with the light came a horrifying sight. The walls of the house were covered in strange runes, all drawn in blood. The ceiling seemed lower, as if the house itself was closing in on me. In the center of the house, a child was tied to an altar. Even though I couldn't see her clearly, I knew who it was. Desperate, I tried to run, but the house fell into darkness again. My heart was pounding so hard I could hear it in my ears. Another flash lit up the house, but the child was no longer tied to the altar. Taking advantage of the brief moments of light, I looked around frantically, searching for her, but she was nowhere to be seen. Instinctively, I ran towards where the door should be, but I crashed into something small before I reached it. A third flash revealed what it was. It was her, covered in blood, holding a golden dagger, staring maliciously at me. Her eyes were deep and empty, and a cruel smile formed on her pale face. The light disappeared, but with it, the pain arrived. I felt the cold metal piercing me once, twice, multiple times, until... Dude, what happened? My colleague was staring at me, with our companion standing a little behind him. I said, I was lying down. Where am I? You're in the house we entered, of course. While we walked around, you decided to go through the house, and since you took too long to catch up with us, we came back for you and found you unconscious on the floor. Come on, let me help you up. He helped me up, and we left. I didn't tell him what I had seen because, well, he wouldn't believe me. But my head was still pounding, and my hands were sweating. Still uneasy, I took one last look at the house. It looked exactly the same as before we entered, but there was something lying on the ground near the front door, a small teddy bear. It was soaked in blood. If you enjoyed this video, don't forget to subscribe to our channel. If you want your story to be told here, contact us at the email in the first comment. I'll see you in the next video, here on The Secret Channel.